I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Rogers. She was the type that turned heads when she walked in the room. Pretty face, wild eyes, and a dangerous secret hiding behind that smile. But meth don't care how good you look. It'll eat your soul just the same. It started innocent, just trying to fit in, a hit here, a high there, until the high became the only thing that mattered. Before long, she wasn't just using it, she was moving it, pounds at a time, money pouring in, power, attention, the rush. She thought she had control. She became the plug in heels, dancing under neon lights by night, selling weight behind closed doors by morning. But when you play in the streets long enough, the streets always play back harder. The feds came crashing down. The same fast life that built her up tore her world into pieces. Federal time, cold walls, hard lessons. But sometimes it takes losing everything to finally find yourself again. This is her story of beauty, addiction, and redemption in a world where second chances don't come easy. This is DOC TV Unleashed, and this is the story of Jennifer Rogers. What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV Unleashed. If you're tapping into this channel for the first time, on this channel I talk about prison, jail, crime, and crazy stories, and that's exactly what I have for you today. This girl's been through a lot in her life, and she came on the channel today to share all about that. For the people that don't know who you are, could you just introduce yourself, tell them your name, where you're from, and then we can go ahead and get started with your story.
Yeah, so my name is Jennifer Rogers, and I am originally from Summerville, Georgia, which is a very small town up in Northwest Georgia.
Okay. And well, I'm in Florida, so we're like neighbors then.
Yes, we are.
What I know, you went to the federal prison system. Before that you went there, though, I heard that you lived a pretty crazy life. So could you give the people a little bit of idea, like how you grew up, and then what took place in your life that got you into the crazy life?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very sheltered environment, small town, Bible Belt. Anybody that's from the South or a very small town can kind of resonate with what that might look like. We were sheltered, so we didn't get exposed to a lot. However, growing up, I was the child that I was wild, and I had these large ideas in life, and I just never wanted to be fit in a box. And so with that came a lot of discipline, and because of that, I kind of grew up with some self-worth issues. Never felt like I was really good enough. Always struggled with, why am I like this, or why am I different? And that kind of seed started to take root in my life over a period of time. And it grew and it grew and it grew until it became kind of a problematic thing. My parents got divorced when I was 13 going on 14 years old. And when that happened, it took this family environment that I had and kind of the culture of our home, and it was just ruined. And from that moment forward, I really began to struggle. And I was struggling internally, and no one really recognized it because the adults, the parents, they're, figuring out their own lives. They had been married over 20 years, and now they're trying to figure out, well, who am I outside of this marriage? And kids are being shuffled around between house and house. And here I am, this young teenage girl coming into puberty, and now I'm searching for that void that I'm feeling and that I'm living with as a result of our home. It went from this loud, vibrant home to this quiet, kind of depressed environment. And so from there, initially I started looking for that replacement of love in boys. And when that no longer was the answer, eventually I ended up experimenting in drugs. And it started just as a normal small town, like partying type environment on the weekends. All the athletes were partying, we're drinking, we start smoking weed. I then moved schools into a new environment, and eventually I get introduced to methamphetamines. And when that happened, it was the start of a very long and dark road.
How did that day go down when you first tried meth? Because that's like a big step. You know what I mean? Like,
So I actually was working at this store in the mall called Claire's, and there was this store manager that I worked with, and her name was Tracy, and she was like the craziest person you have ever met in your life. She wasn't like your small town normal, not for sure what I grew up in, anyways. And so I found out as I began to continue to work with her that she was trading store merchandise for methamphetamines with these women that were coming in. So she confided that in me. I'm 17 years old. And in the midst of that, I began to become curious about it. So one of my best friends in high school, she had actually done meth before. And so I'm talking to her about it. And had she not already tried it, I may have not have been willing at that time to give it a shot, but she had tried it. And so I was like, okay, you know, we'll try it. As conversations are continuing to happen, I'm like, what's the worst thing, you know, that could happen? It's, you know, I had no exposure. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So we have the plan. And prior to that, the person that was selling the drugs from Atlanta would come into the store sometimes. And he was this bodybuilding, you know, white, attractive male, totally normal. And so I'm like, well, it can't be that bad if he's doing it. So we make the plan and we go to Tracy's house, and you know, they bust the meth out and break it up and put it on some foil. And she shows me how to, you know, light it and move the boat. And I got high. And
what was that like? Did you know instantly, like, I love this shit? Or was it like, no?
No, not the first time. It wasn't instantly. I knew that it gave me a feeling that I had never felt before. It was like an immediate just, you know, kind of like that, like, whoa, what is that? You know, a feeling of like, I could just do anything, but it also speeds you up. And so I just was talking. And I've always been a talker. That was one of the things I always got in trouble for when I was a kid in school, was talking and getting out of my seat. And so it just amplified, you know, the personality of who I already am. My friend Amber and I sat in the bathroom for hours just talking because my stomach was tore up. So we're in the bathroom. Then we get out and we go and we watch that independent made film called Requiem of a Dream. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's the craziest movie you will ever watch in your life. And we're high. And so it feels like we're living the life of these people in this movie. And the night finally ends and we leave there. And I don't think that I slept for probably 2 days after that. I was just awake. And so initially it wasn't alluring to me. It was just something that I had tried. But I think that it sparked a little bit of probably curiosity. And so as time went on in our friend circle, I started to talk to some of my other girlfriends from other schools and find out that it's not very uncommon that people are doing this in the area that we live in. And so she was living in an environment where there were like adult family members of hers that were getting high on meth. And so I actually went with her and I got high again in her group of people, of family. And it's like older men, older women. And when I got high that second time, that was it.
Off to the races.
That was it. Off to the races. I was like, hooked at that point. Like it was like I felt like I could conquer the world.
Yeah, that's exactly how it makes you feel too. How
Yes.
long was it after that point in your life till, I'm assuming you've never been arrested at this point, right?
No, I am at this point, I'm in the 11th grade in high school. I miss our high school. I'm captain of my co-ed all-star cheerleading squad. I work at the cheer gym. I also work at Claire's. And so on the outside, my life looked like I totally had it all together. And on the inside, I'm living with this void of like, who am I and where do I fit in and why do I feel this way and what is it that I'm searching for? And the more I continue to do the drugs, the more that I felt like I finally kind of fit in somewhere, that it didn't matter if I was Miss Armuchee High School. It didn't matter if I'm captain of the co-ed cheerleading squad. I didn't have to show up perfect in that world because I was just accepted, because in that world, no one is perfect. And so that was also alluring to me because I grew up with this concept of I have to perform and earn love versus I just should get love. And when you grow up with something like that, it's like you're missing something and you don't know how to find it or connect to it. And that's really where addiction comes from in most people. It is, there's a void or there's a trauma or there's something that you're lacking or that you're avoiding. And so you begin to use these drugs and they fulfill that need for the moment. And unfortunately, the reality, especially when you're doing meth, is that it will fill the void. And then eventually the void becomes bigger because it takes everything from you that you've ever had.
Yeah, including your soul. That stuff is no joke.
It is not. Yes.
So how long after that point was it that you found yourself, like, I mean, I'm assuming doing that, you're around more dangerous people, you get involved with the criminal lifestyle. There's a whole other element that comes from just, you know, experimenting with the drug. Then you get into that life, and that life is crazy, and it only ends in 3 ways: jails, institutions, and death. So when was it that you started to experience one of those 3 things?
I started using towards the end of my 11th grade year. And by the end of my senior year, so it had been about a year that I was using. And within that year's time frame, I was working. I got another job at a restaurant. So I'm waitressing. I'm making good money. You know, I'm in this relationship with an older guy and I'm still in high school. However, I'm starting to not go to school and I'm missing days because now I'm hanging around adults that are addicts and they're not going to school. And so the signs are there, but no one's seeing the signs because no one knows that I'm not showing up at school. No one knows that my grades are failing. And so I'm literally living this life and I know, but no one else knows. And towards the end of my senior year, the school had a meeting with my parents because I had missed so many days. And they're like, if she continues to miss days, you know, she's running the risk of not graduating. Now, I was passing, my grades were passing. So I began to then have to start going to school more. And I ended up, it was about 45 days, 60 days or so from senior graduation. It was actually the week I was supposed to crown for the Miss Armuchee pageant at our school. I had left where I was staying that night, and I actually had no drugs because I was with the guy that I was dating. He didn't know that I was using, and I had been up at that point weeks, maybe days. It was not uncommon for me to be up 5, 6, 7, 8 days at a time because I just never came down off the drugs. So I stayed the night with him. We get up the next morning at 5 o'clock. He wakes me up. I'm totally disoriented and out of it. He's got to go wash his clothes. We both have to work that day at the restaurant. I leave and I go maybe 5 minutes up the road and I'm driving. I have my windows down. I have the music blaring and I'm going to the dope house that I hang out at because I know they're going to be up and I know there's going to be drugs there. And I turn onto the main road to get there. And I don't remember anything until my car goes over the embankment and it like flings me up into the ceiling. And my car is literally head on into a privacy fence. And it just takes the whole fence up out of the ground. Fence post comes through my windshield. Windshield is caved in. And I'm so disoriented. I don't know what to do because I just can't get it together for a second. Once I realize like I'm in this car and I'm trapped in this car, I was so disoriented, it never occurred to me climb out the passenger side of the door. I was out of it.
Yeah.
I really, in that moment, I couldn't even remember where I was going. And so I'm searching for my phone. I can't find it because the impact of that threw my phone somewhere. I'm blaring on the horn because I can see these people in their house. Like, they clearly heard it. Their lights are on. They're looking out the window like, someone come help me. And they ended up calling the police. So the police gets there and he shines the light in my window and he's like, where are you headed this early in the morning? I couldn't remember. I didn't know where I was going. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, where am I going? Where am I going? So I gave the first logical answer that I could come up with. Where would I be going this early in the morning? And so I was like, I'm going to get ready for school. And he starts to write it and he pauses and he looks at me and he says, you're going to school on a Sunday? And question mark. And that's when it like triggered my memory. Like, I knew in that moment where I was going. I remembered everything. I was like, oh, no. I'm going to my friend's house. I have to wash my clothes for work. I'm working a double today. And so they eventually get me out of the car. I find my phone. And I get into the back of the ambulance. The ambulance is checking me out. They're like, you probably should go to the hospital. We think you have a concussion. Would you like to go? And I was like, no, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. So by this time, I've called my friend Amber, and she is dating a police officer, and they're living together, and we're living this whole life, and he doesn't know, or if he did know, we never knew that he knew. And so she has since then spoke with someone else at the police department, and she's listening to it on the scanner. And now they've got me sitting in the back of the police car because they're searching my car. Well, I didn't mind them searching my car because I wasn't dealing drugs. I never carried drugs. It was rare that I would even have anything on me because I'm a senior in high school. I'm literally just using drugs when I go hang out with people. And she tells me, you're about to get arrested. And I was like, what? And she said, yes, I just heard it on the scanner. And I said, for what? And she said, for possession of methamphetamines. So they take me to jail. And at this point, I'm probably 105 pounds skinny. I mean, I am like skin and bones, but I had always grown up with this weight complex because I was not this rail thin, skinny, country white girl. I had curves, and this boy named me Big Butt Bowman in the 5th grade. And it like ruined my life. Like, I had this complex. And so the drugs made me skinny. And that was another allure that I had for it because I just wanted to be that. So I get to the jail. They put me in a holding cell. I wake up the next morning. I cried myself to sleep. I woke up the next morning and I had gotten a bond. They had given me like a $3,500 bond. And so I call Amber, and I'm trying to call Brent, who was my best friend, who was also a drug dealer, and I can't get him on the phone. And I can't get him on the phone because he's passed out somewhere because he's been up for days. And so I can't get anybody on the phone. So I'm like, I'm going to have to call my parents at this point. And I could not bring myself to call my dad. So I called my mom, and I was, hey, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm just sitting here. What are you doing? And I was like, well, can you come get me? And she's like, where are you? I said, well, I wrecked my car last night. They found meth in the car. It wasn't mine. And I'm in jail. So she went silent for a second, and she says, I'll let you know. And she just hangs up.
Damn.
So I go back in the holding cell, and here in like a couple of hours, and maybe not even that long, her and my dad show up. Now, mind you, I haven't seen them in a united front in years because they aren't co-parenting well. So they're both there, like this united front, and they're like, you're a drug addict, and we're not getting you out unless you agree to go to Wynwood. Well, Wynwood was not a drug rehab facility. It was like a place where crazy people go.
Like a psych.
And so I screamed at the top of my lungs, and I'm not going to Wynwood. And of course, that only further proved that I was a drug addict.
Right.
They were like, we're not getting you out. And so the officer comes, he drags, leads me by the arm, takes me back into medical diagnostics. And the woman in medical, she says, honey, I don't know if you have a drug problem or not. But what I do know is at least at Wynwood, you would be considered a person. Here, you're just an inmate number. And you're a young, pretty woman. And one of these women back here are going to try to make you their bitch. And I just started crying because what does that even mean? So they get me to the back. I'm so frail, I can't even pick up my mat to get it up the stairs. And ironically, the woman that was like working in the back of the jail as a runaround, she was the woman that my manager was trading the store merchandise to. So she's in the jail.
Okay.
And she picks my mattress up, takes it and puts it on my bed. Her daughter is the person that I'm bunking with. She's got a line of something chopped out on the table, about to snort it. And when I walk in, she, kind of brushes it into the floor. So I end up going down and I call my dad because I knew if I could just get to my dad that he would get me out. And so I call him and I was like, Daddy, come and get me out. I'll take a drug test. If I fail it, I'll go to Wynwood. So he says, okay. So I lay on my bunk. I go back to sleep. Here in a little bit, Bowman, pack it up. That's my maiden name. And so I go up and it's not him. It's my mom and him. So my mom signs the bond with a property bond. And I get out and I go to my mom's house. Well, I had orchestrated a whole plan at that point that I was going to go to school on Monday, business as usual. My friend Brent was going to bring me something to flush my system to drink at school that day. I would get out, take the drug test. It's clean. I've proven I'm not a drug addict. And now I'm just going on business as usual, right? Because I had no intention at that point of changing what I was doing. So my mom and I end up getting into this knockdown, drag out argument because I had been off and on the phone with Amber all morning and they were blaming Amber. They didn't want to believe that it was me. And so she takes my phone away from me. And that only infuriates me because at this point, I'm 18 years old. I pay that phone bill. And, we had a very fractured relationship, my mom and I, for quite some time. So I had not been living at her house. So they then decide they're not taking me to school because they think I'm going to run away. So we go and we get food and then we get to the hospital and to take this drug test. Well, I knew that I was 18 years old and I did not have to allow them to go back into the room with me. So as they're bringing us all back, I said, I don't want them in the room. And there was nothing that they could do about it. And of course it made them mad, but HIPAA is HIPAA. And so they get me back there. I know I'm going to fail this drug test. It's taking forever. There's a phone on the wall outside of the hospital because they still had my cell phone. So I'm calling. I call Amber. I call Brent. I'm like, listen, I'm going to fail this drug test. I'm not going to Wynwood. They're going to come off my bond. So I need you to come and bond me out. So, of course, I failed the drug test for meth. And then I go out there and I was like, well, I passed it. And they were like, well, we want to see, see the results. I was like, okay, I failed it for traces of methamphetamine. It's like, what does that even mean? A trace, small amount. Meth is meth. It doesn't matter. But, I'm still in this state of I had been living behind this mask and this lie for so long that I'm still trying to keep it up because I don't see that there's anything wrong with this life that I'm living because I'm finally in a place where I feel happy and I feel accepted and I don't care if y'all like it or not. That's where I was. So they're like, you need to go to Wynwood. You have a problem. I was like, I am not going to Wynwood and I do not have a drug problem. So my mom's sister is there, my older sister, they're all just crying. My dad grabs my arm and his whole hand fits around my arm. That's how skinny I was. He was like, look at what you're doing to yourself. You look terrible. And I was like, I look good like this. I was just Man, I was so lost. So we go out to the car and he's like, should we put her in the back seat in the middle so she doesn't jump out of the car? I was like, jump out of the car. I am not crazy. I'm not going to jump out of a moving car. So they get me back to the jail. They come off my bond. And in a little bit, Brent gave someone the money to come bond me out with a bondsman. My parents knew the moment that I was bonded out. They knew who bonded me out. They called the people and were like, why are you getting her out of jail? She has a drug problem. We are her parents. We're trying to help her. And they just told them, listen, she may have a drug problem, but Floyd County Jail is not the place to rectify it. So I stayed at their house that night. And then the next morning I get up and I went home to my dad's house. And I was clean for a little bit. I end up getting pregnant with my daughter like a month later. And now I'm 18 years old. I've been kicked out of high school because they will not let me return to the high school because I was an out of area student. It was a small town. And because it was a small town, this arrest was on the front page of the newspaper. It was on every radio station.
Damn.
Miss Archie High School arrested for felony possession of methamphetamines, says she was going to school on a Sunday.
Oh man.
So it was headline. It was headline news. You would have thought that I was like the mob at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
But small town, you report what you want to report, and it made the news, unfortunately.
So you're pregnant now and you're out of school. What happens next? Like, where's your life go?
I went and got my GED because I couldn't graduate. And in order to move schools, I would have had to gone a whole nother year in a different school where I was originally from. So I'm not doing that because my grades could have graduated me, but I couldn't transfer because of how late it was. So I went and got my GED. I end up moving in with her dad and his mother. And I'm working at the restaurant, I'm back working and I'm just pregnant. My life is just kind of moving in that moment. And the reality started to set in that I'm 18 years old. My entire life just fell apart. I'm pregnant and I'm pregnant with someone that went ahead and signed up in the military to go into boot camp early, knowing that I was pregnant. And that was very difficult emotionally. And it left me kind of feeling alone in this situation. And so now I'm just kind of feel abandoned all over again, which just triggered that feeling that I had grown up with in my childhood. And so now I'm starting to hang back out with just my drug friends and I'm just hanging out with them and I'm pregnant and I'm crying every day. And I am so lost that I don't know what to do. And yes, I had work and I had my work outlet. And that was the one thing that was kind of keeping me sane. But my family couldn't understand what I was going through. They've just seen my life spiraling. And now here I am pregnant. And now the father has went away and they want us to get married because we're from a small town. It's the right thing to do. Right. And so it was all these things going on in my life, and I am literally just a shell of a person existing in it.
I know the feeling. So I'm assuming then you have your kid, and how long was it after that you went back to the meth?
I had her, and when she was 2 months old, maybe 3 months, I started to go back around my old friends. Because initially when I had her and I held her, I said, I will never go back to that life again. It was the first time that I felt the love that I had been searching for. And I vowed that I wouldn't go back. But the reality of not just someone that's living in addiction, because you can walk away from addiction and not go back, especially over something like that. But when you're dealing with the wound that created the reason for the addiction in the first place, and you've never dealt with that wound, you're going to find something else to replace it until you deal with the wound. And so for me, I didn't have anything else to replace it. So I went back. So I start getting high again. No one knows it because now I'm doing it responsibly, so to speak. I'm not getting high all the time. I'm doing it maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. That's the extent of it. I have to go to court on these charges. They drop it to a possession of drug-related objects misdemeanor. I pled out to first offender, pled guilty to it, and they gave me 12 months of unsupervised probation and a fine. I'm in front of the judge. I look like I've got it all together. No one knows that I'm back getting high. And I've since gotten married. My husband's in the military. I've got this baby. So in the public opinion, in the public eye, I've got my life together. I have to go and report to this probation officer in person one time. I go in there and I report, and she drug tests me.
Oh, man.
And I failed it for methamphetamines. So I do the drug test and I leave, and I get a call about 2.5 weeks later. And she says, well, I'm calling because you failed your drug test for methamphetamines, and I don't know what the judge is going to do, but you're on first offender, and I'm going to have to ask the judge, and there's a good chance she may violate you. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so my friends knew. I hadn't said anything to my family because I wasn't going to tell it if they weren't going to violate me. So then she ends up calling me back a couple of days later, and she said, the judge is violating you for 60 days of your probation. She said, now you'll get a 2-for-1 in county jail, but you're going to have to serve 30 days in Floyd County Jail. I've got this new baby. I'm married. He's in boot camp. He's getting ready to get stationed out in Washington State. So now I've got to tell my family and him that I failed this drug test. And so I developed a story. Went to a party, got high, I messed up, I'm so sorry. And so I had to serve the time. And in the midst of that, he gets stationed in Washington State. My mom keeps my daughter for me during that time. They ended up letting me break it up into 2-week increments. And so I did it 2 weeks. I was out a couple days. I went back in 2 weeks. And when I got out from there, he flew back, and we actually drove all of our stuff out to Washington State and moved our lives there. So I'm doing random drug screens. I'm clean. I'm doing well. I'm running this all-star cheer gym. My life seems to be taking a new leaf. I've left my old playground behind, and I don't feel the need to get high anymore. And I just had this big dream that I was going to open this all-star cheer gym, and this was what my life was going to be. It was like a second lease in life, and I really was having that opportunity. Well, our marriage started to miserably fail. And in the chaos and the failure of that marriage, I came home to visit for Easter, and I ended up going in and getting high again. And I had been clean for almost a year at that point. And that decision was the start of a snowball effect in my life for the next several years. So I ended up leaving the state of Washington, moving back to Georgia with my daughter. I got a job at a telemarketing, center, and slowly but surely I began to get high again. And now I'm back to living this double life all over again.
After that was going on, how bad did it snowball? And how quickly did all that happen?
It took about March, April, May, June, July, August. It took about 10 months. And it really wasn't at the height of a snowball at 10 months. But what happened was I lost my job. And when I lost my telemarketing job, it was during the holidays, and I needed to be able to provide Christmas, and I had rent and all of this stuff. And so at that point, I went and I got a job in a nightclub in Atlanta. And when I did that, my addiction went from just kind of fun every now and then to like an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, because that is the atmosphere in those type of clubs too.
It is.
How old were you at that point?
I was 20 years old, and I had never even stepped foot in a club before in my life.
So how long did that last?
It lasted for about a year. I worked there off and on, not consistently, but, if I would get sick of it, and then if I, needed money, I would go back and do it again because it was easy, quick money. But I hated the concept of what it was. Because for me, it was dancing. I'm on drugs. It's fun. It was never sexual to me. And I know that what the environment is. I know that's why people come in there. But for me, it was never that. And so the side of it that was that, I would have to get so high to ignore it that it only further amplified what my addiction was, unfortunately.
Like, do you think that you got to that point because, again, you never addressed that void and you're just constantly trying to numb that over time?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then honestly, it was, part of it was fun. You know, it's like when you're living in that life and the ceiling hasn't fallen on you yet, you still feel like there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. I'm paying my bills. I'm taking care of my daughter. I've got all this money. We live in a nice house. I'm driving a nice car. I don't financially need anybody. What is wrong with what I'm doing? And in my mind, it was nothing.
And you didn't have the probation hanging over your head at this point? That was...
No, because I had completed that when I was in Washington State. So now I'm just totally free and living my life. Yes. So once I stopped dancing, I started selling drugs. And it kind of transpired because I was in a situation where I asked my now co-defendant to front me a 1/4 ounce. He did not want to. I talked him into it. He fronted it to me and I broke it down and realized how much money was tied, to that and to selling drugs and how easy it was. And so I was like, I'm just going to sell drugs. That way I can be home. I can be a mom, I don't have to go work anywhere. I don't have to deal with the stuff at the club. And so I started to sell drugs. And at first it was just very small quantities. And from that, it was in a 1/2 ounce and then 1 ounce and then 2 ounces and then 5 ounces and then 8 ounces and then a pound. And so over a period of time, it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And at one point in time, my co-defendant actually got violated on his probation. So then I took over all his clients. So where it went from more kind of casual, just making enough money, breaking stuff down to, pay for my lifestyle and the things that I wanted to do for my daughter and I, then it became like I'm really actually moving a significant amount of weight at this point, and I wasn't breaking it down anymore. And, I would have some that I would do that with occasionally, but I was more so splitting it up and making 2 big drops at 2 different locations, and then they would sell it. So now I've kind of got this situation going, and I don't want to necessarily say an enterprise because it wasn't that, but it was between a 1/2 pound and a pound of dope that I was probably selling a week. And so I'm doing this and, I'm walking around, $10,000 cash on me at any given time. I had gotten arrested a couple of times in between all of this on trumped up charges, no dope. And I ended up beating the charges every time. The first major arrest, I was arrested for 8 felonies, which included methamphetamines, possession of meth, possession with intent to distribute, pills not in original container, theft by service of singular ghost phone, concealed tag, altered tag, no proof of insurance, and driving on a suspended license.